I have a couple more articles. There's one here by Hemant Mehta. I don't know if you guys know who that is. He is in my community on YouTube, the atheist community. I know him. A lot of my friends know him. He's a really chill dude. But he has this blog on Patheos called The Friendly Atheist. He wrote an article entitled Woman Convicted of Killing Her Two Kids on Orders of Cult Leader. So kind of caught my attention and I wanted to see what it had to say. He wrote this just 2 days ago. A member of a dangerous doomsday religious cult was convicted of first-degree murder for the deaths of her 2 young daughters, but the leader of the group is also on trial for the murders. The attorneys for Nishika Bramble argued that she was legally responsible for her children's deaths by negligence, locking them in a car with no food or water, but said it was a religious leader and manipulative narcissist by the name of Madani Ceus, C-E-U-S, who persuaded her to do it. Bramble was in a position of trust over the girls, Deputy District Attorney Robert Whiting told jurors. She knew it would result in their deaths, he said, replaying portions of her recorded interrogation, and said once Ceus had singled her out as unclean, Bramble acted very quickly to save her own life and that of the child she was carrying. Miss Bramble knowingly caused the deaths of the children. She could have avoided that fate, just like she did for herself, he said. This is not a case where someone was the victim of larger circumstances and couldn't control her actions. Really interesting. I have a lot to say about this, actually. Let me continue reading. The ultimate question is how much blame a cult victim should bear if she was pressured into doing something criminal. The brainwashing can't be ignored, but neither should the fact that only one person committed the act. Bramble's defense team claimed Ceus was a cult leader who worked to separate the kids from their mother since they first arrived at the compound, and that there was no way Bramble had complete control over her actions. They insisted the complete submission to Ceus was part of the program. Her attorney said, as absurd as people outside of the loose-knit family band might have found it, Bramble and others believed absolutely that Ceus had the power to reap their souls, that their ascendance into the light body depended on unswerving obedience to her. Bramble had acted on Ceus' orders out of fear, attorney Harvey Palevsky said. What this case is about is the illusion of free will, Palevsky said. Interesting. The defense team brought in cult expert Janja Lalick, I've never heard of them before, to testify, and she explained that cults work only through devotion to a charismatic figure like Ceus. Still, it wasn't enough to save Bramble. She was eventually convicted. All right, I do have a lot to say about this. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that, I've talked about this a couple of times on my channel, but I was addicted to substances for a while. And as time went on, I started out as a Jehovah's Witness, and I had all of these moral beliefs and feelings and everything, right? I would never steal, I would never lie, I would never cheat in any way unless it was to benefit Jehovah's Witnesses. But generally, that stuff was kind of built into me from birth, really. I was motivated to be extremely morally upright. And as time went on, slowly but surely, I could see my moral compass eroding as I fell deeper and deeper into addiction. That's what happens. When somebody gets addicted to a substance, their brain starts changing. Their feelings on things start changing. Their ideas and beliefs all start eroding slowly, one day at a time. You give up this one thing, and you're like, well, this isn't that different from that. So you give up the next thing. It's like you're giving up moral ground every day when you're in addiction. That's how it works. And in many ways, cults work the exact same way. You can sit here and say, how can a mother do that to her kids? That's so wrong. And you can say the same thing about my mother. How can a mother do that to their kid? Stop talking to them like that. That's so wrong. I would never do that. But think about this. You're taking one short logical step at a time. One short logical step. And all you need is just one little piece to be off in that logic, and it sends you on a completely different path. All you need is one little piece of logic. Just take it for granted. Okay, the Bible is true. Let's just say the Bible is true. Everything in the Bible is true and was written by God. Let's just start from that starting point, assuming we're a religious person, okay? Assuming we're a Jehovah's Witness. Once you start from that point, you take one more logical step at a time. You see in the Bible it says you're not even supposed to dine with a man who doesn't believe in God. Now, they're leaving out the next letter that Paul wrote where he says, never mind, I'm sorry, you don't want to cause undue sadness to people by shunning them. They're going to ignore that. You don't need to see that. That one twisted little logical step where it just leave everything else out and say, the Bible says don't even eat with an apostate. Just take that and ignore everything else. That's one small logical step. And the moment you take that logical step, the moment you accept that logical step, everything else falls into place, and everything else Jehovah's Witnesses do makes sense. It's wrong, but it makes sense. You can understand how they got to where they are, even knowing that it's wrong that they got there. And that's how it works. It's a lot like addiction in that way. It's just short logical steps. It's short erosions into immoral behavior where you can justify each small step into immoral behavior, like shunning, like stealing to provide yourself with what you need to stay addicted. So we sit here and look at the end result of that brainwashing. This woman killing her kids, for example. We're sitting here and looking at the end result of those logical steps, but we're not looking at the progression. We aren't looking at the logical steps that it took for her to decide that that was the right thing to do. If we switched bodies with her, atom for atom, there would be nothing extra that's us. There is no extra thing, no extra willpower in us that isn't in her. There's no extra special soul or something in us that isn't in her. She takes logical steps just like every other human. If you had been in that intensive brainwashing type of situation, if I had been in that intensive brainwashing situation, there's nothing unique about me that would have been able to resist the brainwashing if I hadn't grown up understanding that that's how it works. Now, I know a lot about cults, so I can say pretty confidently that I probably wouldn't find myself in a situation like this personally. But a lot of people do. A lot of people do. Millions, billions maybe. They find themselves making these short logical steps and doing immoral things in the name of morality all the time. Now, this is an extreme example, but I am hard pressed to judge somebody for doing something under the influence of a cult. They've taken her autonomy away. They've taken her consent away. She is, for all intents and purposes, a robot following instructions and doing what she believes to be the right thing. Just like my mom is. She has completely abandoned me. I don't even talk to her. But she thinks she's doing the right thing under the influence of a cult. She thinks she's doing the right thing. I find it really difficult to blame my own mother for all of the pain that she's put me through. I find it really hard to blame her for that, and really hard to hate her for any of that, because I was in that mindset too. I shunned my brother for a while, even. So, like I said, I don't know the whole situation with this legal case with this woman. I can sit here and objectively say it's wrong to kill your kids. Period. That's wrong. She did the wrong thing. But I really don't understand what she's been through. I don't understand the short logical steps that she has been fed to get to the conclusions that she came to. So I feel like I just have to leave it in the hands of the court system, as unhappy as I am about that. But I would honestly err more on the side of being understanding and protective of the cult member, and try to prosecute the cult leader.